I've got 2 reverse gear fabrications to do, and I did this one first on a 1100 Virago. What it consists of is, underneath this cover is a electric starter motor. We've got an isolator switch here, which you have to be able to engage reverse gear, you have to put the isolator switch in and turn the key, and the bike has to be in neutral, and then you can push this button up here, which is the flash button, the passing light button, and that will then put the remote reverse gear into operation. So just so you can see how that's being done. Now what I was planning to do was actually the next one I've got to do. I've got to do another reverse gear on this intruder, and I was planning to record it as I went along, but I forgot, and I've already got part way through. So basically, just a quick recap just to show what I've done so far. I've got a ring gear, starter motor ring gear of a certain size to match the motor that I'm using and the space that I've got available. And what I've done is a bit unique. I've taken a chop saw blade, an Evolution chop saw blade, 355 Rage 2, 355mm Rage 2, and what I've done is using this little gadget that I picked up in Lidl's, which was rubbish really, I've used the plasma cutter to cut a circle of steel out of the Evolution blade, simply because I didn't want to spin the blade in my lathe, because it would be lethal if it came out. So what I've done is I've turned it down, and then I've ended up turning it down in the lathe till the ring gear would fit inside it. I've welded the ring gear to this pinion flange. So what I've done is machined the center out so that the front part of a prop shaft, and it's got a flange on the inside of it. I've machined that out to fit so that the flange fits, and I've drilled the holes in the appropriate place. So that's where I am so far. I've got that part done. I've now got to strip down the bike, strip down the rear axle, fit this, and then I've got to fit all the gubbins, fit the bracket and everything for a starter motor to sit on the axle, as you can see I've done with this one here. So that's where we are so far. So I will get things ready and then hopefully film myself doing that. So I've basically moved all the crap out of the way, all the braking crap, which all needs to be done properly. Somebody's completely bodged it when they did a disc brake conversion on this one. So I've dismantled all the ancillaries on this trike here, taken the prop shaft off, and I've now mounted the ring gear, which will provide the gear for the pre-engaged starter to engage with to power it backwards. So that's where I am so far on the trike side of things. So I've cut a very rough and ready shape freehand using the plasma cutter. I started to make a stencil up and then I thought, oh sod it, I'll just freehand it out and clean it up later. So that's what we've got so far. That's going to be the mounting for the starter motor, which is here. First of all, I made up a cardboard template to get everything in line. The cardboard template goes on sort of like that. And will then sit on the swinging arm. So I've got to make that in steel. I've chosen 4mm thick steel, which I will reinforce with a couple of braces. But what I'm hoping to do is I've got a big enough hole saw to be able to saw the center out, and then I can just clean it up with the die grinder, because cutting it freehand with the plasma cutter is going to be a bit of a mess. Well, I could cut it, I could cut round a disc or something that would fit, but I'm going to try the hole saw way first. I have cheated here. What I did was put a drill in first and found the center. So now the hole saw is in the right place, set up using the XY table. It's going to be a lot of grinding out to do afterwards, but I don't know, I might make another one using the plasma cutter, see how I get on. So I've managed to do the plate. I know Simon Milliard would probably have used a nail file, and Fred Dibner would have used a piece of string and an ounce of rolling tobacco. I used a worn out grinder. Took a while, but done the job. There we go, just got to drill the holes now. So we've got the bracket made, we've mounted the starter motor for the reverse gear. You can see the distancing. I've marked it on the outside of the motor, and how you go about actually putting the motor to the flywheel is you remove the solenoid, which is this bit here, this bit. You take the solenoid off, you take the main wire to the starter motor off the back there, pull it away, take the solenoid off, pull the solenoid out, and as you pull it out slightly, it springs out anyway, but as you pull it out slightly, you move it towards the outside and it will come away from the dog lever that engages the starter with the flywheel. What you then do is you pull the cog forward, which will come forward now because there's nothing pushing it back, there's no spring pressure pushing it back. So you push this, the cog you can see in there, sat at the back there, you pull him forward and then you can engage it just gently. I mean, you can put a bit of blue tack on the teeth so that it doesn't absolutely fully engage, because you want a little bit of room there. You don't want it to smash straight into the cog, you want it to slide into the cog. So what you then do is you attach it, and then you've got to basically, hopefully if you've made your bracket correctly, you can weld it on. I always tack weld it on to begin with, and then just try and see if the cog won't turn very well from the wheels. It will turn, but it will tend to jam up, because that's not the way it's meant to go. It's meant to go the other way. It's meant to have the little cog driving the big cog. So anyway, that's the bracket welded on. Now the bracket still needs the outer part, which will give it its strength. Obviously that's only a 4mm thick piece of steel. It's not strong enough on its own, but it's welded down through front and back, as you can see, and both sides here. But you can now run a bit of a test just to make sure that your motor is engaging. So there you go, that's working fine. It looks obviously like it's going very, very fast, but that's because it's only turning one wheel at the moment because the other wheel's on the ground. And also, when the starter motor's under load, it will go a lot slower. It's like a winch motor. When it's not on load, it flies along. When it's on load, it works out. If you've ever pushed a vehicle, if you've ever turned a vehicle over on the starter motor to move it, this is pretty much what it is like. It's a little bit faster than that because obviously it's direct drive to the rear axle. But yeah, they work. In practice they work, so that's how we do it. I'll sort of truncate this and show the finishing touches. The piece that goes up through that joins the two sides together, and the two covers that will go on, and there'll be a plastic cover to go over the starter motor as well. But that's basically the mechanics of it. Just to give some different angles so you can see it up close. The critical bit is to make sure that the gear, I mean, what you can do if you know your welding, if you understand how welding works, what you can do is, without any blue tack, just engage the gears with this gear pulled forward with the solenoid off, and then you can fully engage it, clamp using a G-clamp the bottom, and then when you start tack welding from the edge here, the weld will pull it back, and that will give you your little bit of clearance that you would have from your blue tack. But that's just a welding trick. That's using the nature of heat distortion to your advantage, if you like. But I've made so many of these, I kind of know how to do it now. But it is definitely, it makes life a lot easier if you take the solenoid off so that you can draw the cog forward. There are other ways of doing it if you really don't want to take your solenoid off, but there's only 2 bolts, well 3 bolts, and it's off, so might as well. Quick catch up. I've made the outer bracket, a 4mm thick steel, shaped that around. I've made the stainless steel covers, and I've welded on some tags to hold those. I'll show those in more detail. I'm just lining it up now to weld the outer cover on, and it's also this is 4mm thick steel, same as this plate here, so that will then triangulate the whole plate, make it a lot stiffer and stronger. And on this side this bracket here will be welded to the swinging arm, but this will bolt to that so that you can still take the diff apart if you need to. So you'll still be able to take these two bolts out and separate the two halves of the diff, which is quite a critical thing. Not that you have to do anything to these diffs very often, but if you did, you need to be able to get it apart. So there we go. That's now welded on, so that is now super strong because it's basically angled it. So the whole thing is really, really rigid now. What I've done here, as you can see, is welded tags to the upright here. I did that before I made the shape perfect so that it fitted on properly, and then I welded on the tags. And as you can see, the rear tags are quite long, and they cover the area where the ring gear sits. The front tags very short, that's so that the ring gear can still be taken off the diff and pulled forward, because the ring gear is welded to the diff flange, which it doesn't have to be, but it makes it easier to machine, and it makes it a lot easier to keep it concentric, because if it was just on the bolts and it lost concentricity, you could in theory have the ring gear going out of line with the starter motor. So that's just for that. It's mainly because it makes it easier to, because what you basically do is weld the flange to the plate, and then you can put the flange in the lathe and finish machining the plate to fit the ring gear. So it's an easier way of getting it all lined up. And what I've done around this side is I've got a bracket there which is welded to the swinging arm, so that can still be removed, so that you can still split the axle, which is quite important. So that's pretty much all the welding finished, apart from I need to make a cover for the motor. I need to make a plastic cover, which I will demonstrate how to do that, and then I've got to weld some tags on here and here to screw the cover to. So for now I'll put the starter motor back on. Oh, I've also welded the bolts, the starter motor bolts. I've welded those to the back of the plate so that nothing moves. So this is a bird's eye view of how the reversing gear engages. Obviously this will all be done by switches and relays, but that's the starter motor. You can see it in position, it's bolted in, and this is how it works. Now it looks ridiculously fast, but you've got to remember that at the moment it's only powering one wheel, because there's only one wheel in the air. When it's powering both wheels, the wheels will spin at half that speed, and also once you've got the whole weight and everything on it, it will move a lot slower than it's moving at the moment, because that's just obviously the starter motor is freewheeling at the moment with no load. But once you put the starter motor under load, it will slow down, and it actually does slow it down to a very reasonable reverse gear type of speed. So onto the cover for the reverse motor, starter motor. I've cut a corner out of a 25 litre, a black 25 litre oil drum, because they're nice and thick, they're nearly 2 mil thick. So this is what I'm left with. I've heated it up with the hot air gun, and just using a piece of cardboard in the vise, I've made a few pertinent shapes to go around the starter motor. And here's where it's going to fit. Once I've welded some tags on to hold it, it will go in like that, and then sort of like that. It'll be pulled tight and screwed to the tags, just to keep the things looking tidy. So this is how I make the tags. Sometimes I'll drill a hole and weld a nut. I've got these bits of 4mm offcut, and 4mm is plenty thick enough to tap a thread in, so I'll just go down that route. It's one I made earlier, Blue Peter Styley. It's just drilled to 4.5mm, then tapped to 6mm, and that will then weld on. I'll make another, I think 3 of those, and then we'll weld them on, match them up to the cover, make some holes in the cover, and then screw it on. So here we go, we've made a number of tags, we've tapped them, we've drilled them to 4.5mm, we've tapped them to 6mm, standard metric thread. Now we're going to go and attach them to the starter motor bracket, and then we should be nearly there. Finish welding on the tags. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've just got to get the cover, which I've drilled, into position and fit it. That screw's going to probably have to be cut down. I think it's going to be too long. Oh, it might be all right. Right, so that's that done. Just got to do the wiring and then paint it up now. Onto the wiring stage. What I'm going to do is disconnect the wires that go to the pass light, run a new wire down through to the headlamp, and that will be our trigger button for the reverse gear. This one's still got the wires in the handlebar, which is a pain. Makes it very difficult to get to anything. Right, so that's our switch. And I think it's the yellow wire we need to remove. The orange wire we can pick up in the headlamp. Every time you go into these headlights, you think you're going to disturb half the wiring, putting it back together, and it's not going to work. You'll see what I mean in a sec. On the later Boulevard models, they put the wiring under the tank, which was eminently more sensible. Look at that. Right, so I'll find out where the orange wire goes. Now the thing with these is the orange wire goes down into the headlamp as I just showed, but the yellow wire doesn't go down into the headlight. The yellow wire goes across and joins to the other, to the light switch. So I don't think that we can use either of those yellow wires, but I will try disconnecting them and seeing if I can pick them up. But I don't think I can. I think I've tried this before. Wire from this is the red wire from the handlebar switch, and it is somewhere. I've pushed it through, but I now need to pull it up through this hole. Here he is. That wasn't too painful. Right, so there's the red wire. Try and pull the sheathing up through as well now. Comes. Right, that'll do. Yeah, so that is a power source, so I might just as well reconnect that one there. I reconnect that one because he is a live wire from a fuse, so that should then make that one live when I press the switch. So this red wire now needs to connect to another wire that's going to run right to the back to the solenoid, which will trigger the starter motor. And then it'll pick up its earth. Hopefully, on an older one like this, we should have a neutral light that goes to earth. Some of the newer Suzukis, the neutral light didn't go to earth, but I think it did on these old ones. So what I can do is take the earth from the neutral light, let the relay earth through the neutral light, and then it's powered by this switch. This is the wiring I've just done from the headlight flash switch up there. So I've reconnected the orange and red, which is just a live wire, so that was fine. That was the live wire that went up to the lights. So I've unsoldered the yellow wire, which was connected, because that connects through into the headlight system. This is the red wire that I put in extra, that I soldered to the connection where the yellow wire was. What I've now done is it comes down from the switch, comes into the headlamp shell here. I've put a connector on it so it can be disconnected from the headlight shell like all the other wires can be, and then the wire goes back out and it will go, I'll take the tank off, it'll go under the tank and down to the relay, which will be at the back there. So the next job to do is take the seat off, which will allow me to get underneath, get to a power source for the, well, no, I probably won't take a power source for the starter motor. I'll probably take a power source directly off the battery for the starter motor, and I'll put it through a deadlock switch. But I need to get under the seat. I also need to get under the tank so I can run that wire through. And while I've got the tank off, I will change the front air filter, because they're an absolute pig to get to. And while I've got the tank off, might as well get in there and do that. That's where the air filter lives. You can see it's an absolute pain in the ass to do. So you've got to take the tank off. It was just good timing to do this air filter as well, because it was starting to break up. So I'm going to need to hoover the bits out. But yeah, you've got to remove the tank. You don't have to take the pipes off. You can just lay it back a little bit, and you have to take off the top and take the throttle cable, detach the throttle cable, and then this piece. This is the top of the air filter. Once you've replaced the filter, you've got to shove this back in, and you've got to get it to locate at the front. It's meant to do that, but it's not always easy. So I'll give it a good hoover out first, because there's lots of bits of foam in there. This is our red wire. This comes from the pass switch, and it's live in the back of the headlamp. So when you press this switch, you get a live feed. So what I'm now going to do is, I've got a relay here. 2 is the positive. There's a diode in here, so it's got to be connected the right way around. 2 is the positive, 1 is the negative for the electromagnet. So that's the electromagnetic switch. 5 and 3 are the actual connection switch down to the starter motor. So what we'll do now is connect. Yeah. So what I've got to do is this one's got to go to 2. Then I've got to take a separate feed, one that's actually through the ignition. I take a separate feed to 3 or 5. And then from 3 or 5 to this terminal here on the motor. So let's get this one connected up to number 2. One is to earth, so Yeah, so we're going to have to try and find the neutral light switch now so that we can identify Earth. That one maybe. Yes. Right. So, do one of you boys go to Earth? That's the question. Blue it is. Right, so we should feel a click, and we do. And that should now connect those two wires. So just a quick test, just to see that it is switching. Yep. Right, so now we need a plus wire. Doesn't matter which one, but it needs to be one that's that's coming off the ignition switch. So it's got to be alive off the ignition. Or alive off the fuse box. Yeah, I'll take a live off the fuse box. Right, okay, top one is live. Reverse gear in the real world. Put the key in. You should do this with the engine already running. In fact, I'll do that. Well, I'll show it for the video first. You take the key here, you put that in, switch the isolator on. That then arms the reverse gear. So you're in gear and riding. Engage neutral. Neutral light comes on. Then over here, you've got this switch. That's your reverse gear. It won't operate with the bike in gear because it earths through the neutral light. And it won't operate if you turn off the isolator.